We're in week 3 of our series on Ruth, and this is where the plot thickens. Ruth, you remember, is Naomi's daughter-in-law. Naomi's husband passed away. Ruth's husband passed away, and they were living in the land of Moab, which is where Ruth is from. And Naomi decided to take the journey back to Bethlehem to start a new life. Ruth vowed her loyalty to Naomi and said, "Where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Nothing but death shall separate us." The truth is, Naomi was anything but optimistic about the future. When she arrived in Bethlehem, everyone said, "Oh, look, Naomi has come back." But she said, "Don't call me Naomi, because the name Naomi means pleasant." She said, "Call me Mara, because Mara means bitter." Naomi said, "The Lord has made my life bitter. I went away full, but I come home empty. The Lord has afflicted me." In spite of Naomi's less than optimistic outlook, her life was about to change. Her harvest was about to come in. Why? Well, a couple of reasons. One was that even though she said some negative things, she continued to make positive steps. Yes, she was feeling very sorry for herself, but she got out of Moab and on the road back to Bethlehem because she knew that Bethlehem was the place her life could be blessed. Let this be a reminder to us. Even when you don't feel positive about everything in your life, don't let that prevent you from taking positive steps that will put you on the road you need to be on and take you where you need to go. Another reason for the change in Naomi's life was her daughter-in-law, Ruth. Naomi hadn't wanted to be a burden on Ruth, so she tried to get Ruth to go back to her own mother and father. But Ruth insisted on traveling with Naomi. Why? I think there were a couple of reasons. Excuse me. I think that Ruth wanted to live with God's people. She no longer wanted to live in the pagan land of Moab, where they worship false gods. She wanted to live in Bethlehem, where she could worship the true God in the presence of God's people. Ruth also felt tremendous love and loyalty for Naomi. Maybe she felt like she owed her something. Maybe she worried about who would look after her. Or maybe she just enjoyed her company. Whatever the reason, the result was that Ruth said to Naomi, "I want to stay with you from now on." Now, Naomi didn't guilt Ruth into staying with her. In fact, just the opposite. Naomi gave Ruth the opportunity to leave. Ruth stayed because she wanted to, because she was called to. It was Ruth's presence in Naomi's life that made all the difference. And each one of us has the chance to be a Ruth in someone's life. There is someone for whom you can bring love and loyalty and encouragement and hope and help and support. And you may be all they've got. So give some thought to how God can use you this way in the lives of others. Chapter 1 finds Naomi saying, "The Lord has made my life bitter. I went away full, I came back empty." In chapter 2, we began to see some change. After Ruth had the initiative to go work in the fields, gleaning the grain, and after she came home with a sack full of barley, and after she told Naomi how Boaz had helped her, Naomi said, "The Lord bless him." And she talked about what a wonderful man Boaz was. Do you see what was happening? Little by little, Naomi was beginning to abandon her pessimism. Little by little, she was beginning to look a little more optimistically to the future. And so today we arrive in chapter 3 and the tables have turned. Now Naomi begins looking after Ruth. She devises a plan that will ensure a good future for her daughter-in-law. This chapter references some ancient cultural traditions that aren't easy for the modern reader to understand. So today we will work our way through this story, stopping here and there to clarify some curiosities. And then we'll talk for a few minutes about some lessons we can learn. So let's follow the story. One day, Naomi said to Ruth, "My daughter, it is time that I found a permanent home for you so that you will be provided for." Boaz is a close relative of ours, and he's been very kind by letting you gather grain with his young women. In the previous chapter, Boaz was referred not to just a close relative, but as a kinsman redeemer. And a kinsman redeemer was a man who volunteered to take responsibility for his extended family. In ancient Israel, it was a custom that if a man died leaving behind a widow, it became the responsibility of the next of kin, presumably his brother, to marry the widow or care for her financially, even to provide her with a child, so that the deceased man's name and family line could continue. This seems very strange to us today, but let's remember, this was 3,000 years ago in a land far, far away. There was no social security or life insurance. This tradition was established so that the most vulnerable members of society, women and children, could be provided for in the event of an untimely death. This custom also made it possible for a man to have some peace of mind, knowing that if he died before his time, his wife and family would be taken care of. It was the next of kin's responsibility to provide for a man's widow and children, but sometimes there was no next of kin, and sometimes the next of kin was not financially secure enough to take on the added responsibility. Therefore, each family group had kinsman redeemers, men who were affluent enough and good-hearted enough to look after family members, who couldn't always look after themselves. A kinsman redeemer could pay off a family member's debt, or buy their freedom from slavery, or purchase property that a family member needed to sell, or marry a deceased man's widow. So when people were in trouble, they would often look to their kinsman redeemer for help. As we will see in the next chapter, there were times when a kinsman redeemer would say no. However, the idea was that in taking on this role in the family, his inclination was to say yes whenever it was possible. Naomi owned property that had belonged to her late husband. It was a house, maybe some land too. Maybe she owned it outright. Maybe she had something similar to a mortgage on it. It's not exactly clear. Obviously, if she owned the land outright, that could produce crops, and she wouldn't have needed a kinsman redeemer. So I'm pretty sure her land had some kind of mortgage on it. According to the ancient custom, Naomi would go to kinsman redeemer and say, "Will you buy back my land and take me as your wife and take care of me for the rest of my life? If we have no children together, when I die, the land will become yours to be inherited by your sons." She could have done that, but she had seen how Boaz treated Ruth. Remember, we saw he was a little smitten. He kind of fell all over himself to make sure Ruth was taken care of in the fields. I think Naomi's reasoning went something like this. There's no better man than Boaz. He seems to have an interest in Ruth. I can make sure that Ruth is taken care of and that she has the happiness she deserves. And if she's taken care of, I'll have a home too. This is the same woman who said a couple of chapters ago, "Call me bitter because the Lord has afflicted me and given me much suffering." Now, instead of trying to redeem her property and gain a husband for herself, which she has every right to do, she seeks instead to gain a husband for her daughter-in-law. Last week, I quoted Warren Worsby. If our circumstances change for the better, but we remain the same, then we will become worse. God's purpose in providence is not to make us comfortable, but to make us conformable to the image of his son. Well, Naomi's circumstances changed and she became a better person. Obviously, it would have been better if Naomi had been optimistic the whole time, and she could have saved herself a lot of misery. But she didn't continue to compound her mistakes. When things got better in her life, she got better. And you'll find this is true in your life. In the midst of your self-pity, God will often send something your way that you really haven't done anything to earn. Even while you're moaning and groaning and feeling sorry for yourself, he'll bring a blessing into your life. He does this to give you a chance to change your attitude. And if you take it, that's exactly what Naomi did. Chapter 1 was a rough patch in Naomi's life. It was a phase, not a permanent condition. So let's continue the story. Here's Naomi's plan. She's talking to Ruth about Boaz. Tonight he'll be winnowing barley at the threshing floor. Now do as I tell you. Take a bath and put on perfume and dress in your nicest clothes. Then go to the threshing floor, but don't let Boaz see you until he has finished eating and drinking. Be sure to notice where he lies down and then go and uncover his feet and lie down there. He will tell you what to do. I will do everything you say, Ruth replied. So she went down to the threshing floor that night and followed the instructions of her mother-in-law. After Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he lay down at the far end of the pile of grain and went to sleep. Then Ruth came quietly, uncovered his feet and lay down. Now this is not as racy as it sounds. Naomi didn't send Ruth to Boaz's house where he would be sleeping in his bed in his pajamas. She sent him to the threshing floor where he would be sleeping on a mat on the floor, fully clothed. The plan was a little socially unacceptable, true, but it was not completely scandalous. The harvest was over and the field owners were grinding their barley. They worked at it all day long, then slept near their stock during the night to protect it from thieves. And this process took a few days, so the field owners made it a festive occasion. In other words, it was a party. So Naomi told Ruth to take note of where Boaz slept and lay down at his feet during the night. This was a symbolic gesture. In this culture, where it was not uncommon for entire households to sleep in the same room, servants often slept at the feet of their masters. Around midnight, Boaz suddenly woke up and turned over. He was surprised to find a woman lying at his feet. The King James Bible doesn't use the word surprised, it uses the word afraid and says, "Behold, a woman lay at his feet." Behold, indeed. "Who are you?" he asked. And this is an interesting question, as we will see later. It doesn't mean that he didn't recognize her. He used a colloquial Hebrew phrase asking her to explain herself. Why are you here? What are you doing? What exactly is going on? "Well, I'm your servant Ruth," she replied. "Spread the corner of your covering over me, for you are my family redeemer." Spread the corner of your covering over me is another symbolic phrase with a specific meaning. Boaz knew exactly what she wanted. She was saying, "Take me as your wife." Today, if a man says to his girlfriend, "Will you give me your hand?" and then places a ring on it, she knows exactly what he's asking. It's the same with Boaz. Ruth's words and actions made it clear what she wanted. "I want to be your wife." "The Lord bless you, my daughter," Boaz explained. "You are showing even more family loyalty now than you did before, for you have not gone after a younger man, whether rich or poor." This shows how much Ruth and Naomi looked out for one another. Naomi could have sought a kinsman redeemer and husband for herself, but she was worried about Ruth. Ruth, on the other hand, would have been within her rights to seek out a young man closer to her own age, to start a new life with him from scratch, and she would have had no obligation to see that Naomi was provided for. So when Ruth came back to Boaz, she said, "Make me your wife." He knew that part of her motive was to see that Naomi was taken care of too. "Now don't worry about a thing, my daughter. I will do what is necessary, for everyone in town knows you are a virtuous woman." And then he brings up a possible snag in the plan. "But while it's true that I am one of your family redeemers, there is another man who is more closely related to you than I am. Stay here tonight, and in the morning I will talk to him. And if he is willing to redeem you, very well. Let him marry you. But if he's not willing, then as surely as the Lord lives, I will redeem you myself. And I lie down here until morning." Here again, we arrive at a custom that we don't fully understand. That's because we've grown up with the idea that you marry the person you fall in love with. And I imagine we all prefer it this way. But the fact is that 3,000 years ago, people lived differently and thought differently. In ancient cultures, marriage tended to be a more practical, functional agreement. Marriages were often arranged. You didn't marry who you fell in love with. You hoped you could fall in love with the person you married. Therefore, according to the law, the kinsman redeemer closest in kin to the deceased man had the first right to redeem the property and take responsibility for the family, including taking his widow as a wife. So Boaz says to Ruth, I'll make sure this works out for you. Either way, you'll have a husband and a home, and Naomi will be taken care of, and your future will be secure, either with him or with me." The Bible doesn't say this, but I think Boaz was thinking, and I sure do hope it's me. So Ruth lay at Boaz's feet until the morning, but she got up before it was light enough for people to recognize each other. For Boaz said to her, no one must know that a woman was here at the threshing floor. Then Boaz said to her, bring your cloak and spread it out. He measured 6 scoops of barley into the cloak and placed it on her back. Then he returned to town. When Ruth went back to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, what happened, my daughter? The question is translated differently here, but Naomi used the exact same phrase that Boaz used when he found Ruth lying at his feet. Literally, who are you? Just like Boaz wanted to know what was going on, Naomi had asked the same thing. Ruth told Naomi everything Boaz had done for her, and she added, he gave me these 6 scoops of barley and said, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Then Naomi said to her, just be patient, my daughter, until we hear what happens. The man won't rest until he has settled things today. And this is where chapter 3 ends. And next week, we'll see how the story resolves. Today, I want us to look quickly at some things we can learn from the events of chapter 3. Here are 3 lessons that this chapter teaches us. First of all, God can take care of you best when you're willing to take care of others. Naomi could have found a solution to her problems in such a way that didn't benefit Ruth at all. And Ruth could have found a way out of her poverty in such a way that didn't include Naomi. However, they both refused to turn their backs on one another. I heard a story a while back about a group of takeaway co-workers who bought lottery tickets together with the mutual understanding that if one person won, she would share with the others. And then one woman did win a 10 million jackpot. What did she do? She decided to keep it all for herself. She refused to share. They even went to court over it and she won. The most amazing thing about this story is that within a couple of years, this woman was back working in another takeaway, not because she had lost her fortune, but because she missed the camaraderie of common friendship. It's your choice. You can seek out solutions to your problems in such a way that you get taken care of and everyone else gets left out in the cold. Or you can seek out solutions to your problems in such a way that those around you are blessed as much as, if not more, than you are. Which plan do you think that God will bless? Which plan do you think will make your life better in the long run? When you make it your objective to be a blessing to others, God makes it his objective to be a blessing to you. And here's the second lesson from this chapter. The right way often requires a calculated risk. Naomi's plan, sneaking onto the threshing floor and proposing marriage in the middle of the night, came with quite a few risks. Not only could Boaz have said no, he could have taken advantage of Ruth in the darkness of the night, or he could have embarrassed her, shamed her, and tarnished her reputation, ruined her chances with any other man. That was the risk involved in their plan. Faith requires a calculated risk. Sometimes you have to take chances. Ruth couldn't spend the rest of her life sitting at home on the sofa, waiting for Boaz to show up on the doorstep with a box of chocolates. It wasn't going to happen. So Ruth was willing to take a risk, at the very least to risk looking foolish, in order to create for herself the life she wanted to live. And the risk paid off. Boaz was moved by her boldness and touched by her sincerity. In order to create the life you want to live, you'll have to do more than wait for the phone to ring. You need to look ahead to the possibilities, put together a plan, and be willing to take the calculated risk. And here's the third lesson from chapter 3. Not even the best plans go off without a hitch. You get the sense that Ruth didn't mind the idea of being married to Boaz. That's probably why Naomi suggested it. But there was a snag. Another kinsman redeemer had first right of refusal. Maybe he will want to purchase Naomi's land. Maybe he'll want to take Ruth and his wife. Maybe, and if you haven't read chapter 4 yet, then you're not sure, are you? Regardless, there's a snag to deal with. Just because Naomi has a brilliant idea, and just because Ruth follows through with precision, doesn't mean that all the pieces fall immediately into place. Even when God is moving in our lives, working in our lives, performing miracles in our lives, we still have to deal with the glitches from time to time. And dealing with glitches means that you have to wait. I don't know about you, but waiting is not my favourite thing. I would rather just do just about anything than deal with delays. But guess what? If you want to experience God's miraculous intervention in your life, you'll have to wait from time to time. You'll have to deal with snags and complications and setbacks. It doesn't mean that God isn't involved in what you're doing. It's just a necessary part of the process. When Ruth told Naomi about the situation, Naomi said, "Just be patient, my daughter, until we hear what happens. The man won't rest until he has settled things today." The same thing can be said about the God we serve. The situation you're in, the problem you're facing, the solution you seek, he's taking care of it. As David said, "He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep." God is paying attention to what is going on in your life. Even when there's a delay, a hold-up, or a glitch, he's paying attention. He'll provide the right answer for you at the right time. Ruth's story is a story of redemption. Already we've seen a big transformation in their lives, especially in Naomi's attitude, and there's even more to come. Today was a significant step for Ruth because she was able to accept the terms of surrender for God's miraculous blessing in her life. What are the terms of surrender? It's not that you give up and quit. It's not that you let go and let God do everything for you. It's that you do all you can and leave the results in his hands. If you're willing to look out for others, and you're willing to take the necessary risks, and you're willing to deal with the inevitable delays, God is ready to do marvelous things in your life. Amen.